The billionaire CEO's bride-to-be invited his ex-wife to their wedding. She arrived in a Bugatti with twins he didn't know were his. The gleaming Bugatti Chiron sliced through the morning sun as it approached the estate, its engine purring like a satisfied predator. Guests turned, champagne flutes frozen midway to lips, as the $2 million vehicle came to a stop at the red carpet entrance. "Is that?" whispered a guest. "It can't be," replied another. But it was. Dr. Cassie Grant emerged from the driver's seat, elegant in a simple blue dress that somehow outshone the designer gowns surrounding her. She opened the rear door, and two children stepped out. A boy and girl, perhaps 4 years old, with familiar determined expressions and unmistakable features that caused an audible gasp among the wedding guests. "Mommy, is that him?" the little boy asked, pointing toward the grand estate where Maxwell Bennett was preparing to marry another woman. "Yes, Noah," Cassie replied, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "That's your father." Inside the bridal suite, Savannah Carter's face drained of color as her assistant delivered the news. "Twins?" she hissed, her perfectly manicured nails digging into her palm. "Maxwell has twins he doesn't know about? What have you done?" her wedding planner whispered, horror dawning on her face. "I invited his ex-wife," Savannah replied, her voice hollow with shock. "Not his children. Hi, my beautiful sisters. Sometimes life puts us in situations where we must choose between pride and truth, between revenge and healing. Today's story reminds us that our worth isn't measured by the man we marry or the status we achieve, but by the courage to stand in our truth, even when it's difficult. No matter what you're facing today, remember that your value comes from within, not from anyone else's validation. If you've ever had to reclaim your power after being underestimated, this story is for you. I'm Mr. Harrison, and today I'm sharing the remarkable story of how one woman's decision to reveal a long-kept secret changed 3 lives forever. If you believe that every woman deserves to be seen for who she truly is, not who others perceive her to be, hit that like button right now. Savannah Carter adjusted the diamond earring that cost more than most people's cars and smiled at her reflection. Perfect. In 3 days, she would become Mrs. Maxwell Bennett, wife to one of the most powerful tech moguls in the country. At 34, she had orchestrated what many considered impossible, capturing the heart of the notoriously commitment-averse billionaire CEO of Bennett Technologies. The final guest list, Ms. Carter. Her wedding planner, Vivian, placed an elegant folder on the vanity. "We've received confirmations from 298 guests. Only 2 outstanding responses." "Who hasn't responded?" Savannah asked, though she already knew one of the answers. "Senator Harrington and—" Vivian hesitated. "Dr. Cassie Grant." Savannah's smile sharpened. Cassie Grant, Maxwell's ex-wife, the woman who had walked away from him 5 years ago, supposedly to pursue some research position that Savannah had always suspected was just an excuse to leave. After all, who would choose a modest academic career over life with Maxwell Bennett? "Dr. Grant will be attending," Savannah said with quiet certainty. "I spoke with her assistant yesterday." Vivian's professional mask slipped momentarily, revealing surprise. "I wasn't aware you were in contact with Mr. Bennett's former wife. There are many things Maxwell doesn't know about my preparations for our special day." Savannah turned from the mirror, her designer dress whispering against the marble floor. "That will be all, Vivian." Alone again, Savannah moved to the window of the penthouse she shared with Maxwell. Looking out over the city, he seemed to own piece by piece. Their relationship had been a whirlwind. Meeting at a charity gala 18 months ago, dating publicly after 3 months, engaged after a year. The press called it a fairy tale romance. Maxwell called it efficient. Savannah called it victory. What no one knew, what she had carefully concealed beneath designer clothes and practiced smiles, was the satisfaction that drove her from the moment she'd first seen Maxwell Bennett 5 years earlier. Not at the charity gala where they officially met, but at a hospital fundraiser where he had appeared with his then-wife, Cassie. Savannah had been a mid-level executive then, invited only because her company had made a modest donation. She had watched from across the room as Maxwell commanded attention, while Cassie seemed plain and unremarkable beside him in her simple dress. Probably the best she could afford on whatever she earned in that lab she worked in. She doesn't deserve him, Savannah had whispered to herself, watching as Cassie engaged in animated conversation with a group of scientists, seemingly oblivious to the social power her husband wielded. She doesn't even know how to use his influence. When their divorce had made headlines a year later, brief, clinical statements from both parties. No scandal, no drama. Savannah wasn't surprised. Just a sudden, clean break that left the business world buzzing with speculation. Cassie had disappeared to Europe for some research position, while Maxwell had thrown himself into expanding his empire, his personal life becoming a carefully guarded fortress. Savannah had seen her opportunity and planned meticulously. The right connections, the right appearance, the right moment to appear in his life, everything calculated to position herself as the antithesis of Cassie. Where Cassie had been academic and ordinary, Savannah was glamorous and socially connected. Where Cassie had challenged Maxwell, Savannah deferred. Where Cassie had maintained her modest lifestyle, Savannah embraced the luxury that Maxwell's wealth afforded. And it had worked. In 3 days she would have everything, the man, the name, the empire, the life that Cassie had foolishly walked away from. There was just one final piece to her victory. Watching Cassie witness it all. The invitation had been Savannah's idea, presented to Maxwell as a gesture of maturity and confidence. It shows we have nothing to hide, that we're secure in our relationship, she had argued over dinner in their penthouse. Besides, you said yourself that the divorce was amicable. Maxwell had hesitated, his fork pausing midway to his mouth. Something unreadable flickered in his eyes. Cassie won't come. Then there's no harm in inviting her, Savannah had countered smoothly, reaching for her wine glass. And if she does come, it shows she's moved on too. Closure for everyone. He had studied her for a long moment, his gaze penetrating in that way that had made him a formidable business opponent. Why is this important to you? It's not about me, she'd lied, touching his hand gently. I just thought. You never talk about her, about what happened. Maybe this would be healing. Maxwell had returned to his meal, his expression closed once more. Send the invitation if you want, but don't expect her to show up. He had acquiesced as she knew he would. Maxwell might control his business with an iron grip, but in their relationship, he often yielded to her on social matters, seeming almost relieved to have someone else manage that aspect of his life. What Maxwell didn't know was that Savannah had done more than simply send an invitation. She had reached out directly to Cassie's assistant, emphasizing how important it was to Maxwell that his former wife attend, suggesting that her absence might be interpreted as lingering resentment or pain. He would never admit it, she had written, but I know it would mean a great deal to him to have your blessing. The past is the past and he's moved forward. I hope you have too. A calculated risk, but one that had paid off. Cassie had finally responded. A brief message confirming her attendance. Nothing more. It was enough. The thought of seeing the plane, academic Dr. Grant watching as Savannah claimed what she had discarded filled her with a vicious satisfaction. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic in a modern laboratory complex outside of Geneva, Dr. Cassie Grant stared at the wedding invitation that had sat on her desk for weeks, her fingers tracing the embossed lettering. You're really going? Asked her colleague, Dr. Elena Vasquez, leaning against the doorframe of Cassie's office. I am. Cassie looked up, her expression resolute. Why? After everything he did? After keeping the twins' secret for 4 years? Elena shook her head. I don't understand. Cassie glanced at the framed photo on her desk, her children, Noah and Lily, laughing as they played in the snow last winter. Their eyes, so like their father's, sparkled with joy. Because it's time, she said simply. I've built my life, my career. The quantum computing breakthrough is being implemented in 3 continents. The children are old enough to understand, in their way. She took a deep breath. And because his fiancée went to extraordinary lengths to make sure I'd be there. What do you mean? Cassie handed Elena the email from Savannah. She contacted my assistant directly. Made it sound like Maxwell was desperate for my blessing. A small, sad smile touched her lips. He isn't. Trust me. Then why would she? Elena's eyes widened with sudden understanding. She wants to show you off, like a trophy. The ex-wife watching from the sidelines while she takes your place. Exactly, Cassie nodded. She has no idea who I really am or why I left. She's created this narrative where I'm the plain academic who couldn't handle Maxwell's success. She stood, gathering the papers on her desk. She invited me to witness her triumph. Instead, she'll witness mine. The twins, Elena whispered. You're finally going to tell him. It's time they knew their father. And it's time he knew them. Cassie's voice was firm. I never kept them secret out of spite. I kept them secret to protect them, to give them a normal childhood away from the spotlight and Maxwell's complications. And the Bugatti? Elena asked with a small smile. Is that really necessary? Cassie laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in years. The car is just a bonus. A reminder that I didn't disappear into obscurity after all. She shrugged. Besides, when the quantum encryption patent sold, my financial advisor suggested I make one significant purchase. Something just for me. Well, Elena grinned. If you're going to make an entrance, might as well make it unforgettable. Back in New York, the day before the wedding, Maxwell Bennett stood at the window of his office, 60 floors above the city that had watched his rise from struggling entrepreneur to tech titan. At 45, he carried his success in the confident set of his shoulders, in the precise cut of his suits, in the measured cadence of his speech that made board members and competitors alike hang on his every word. Yet today, his usual focus was fractured, his mind returning again and again to the guest list Savannah had shown him that morning. One name stood out among the hundreds of business associates, politicians, and celebrities. Dr. Cassie Grant. She confirmed? He had asked, keeping his voice carefully neutral. Yes, Savannah had replied, watching him closely. Surprised. A little, he'd admitted. Cassie was never one for social events. Savannah had smiled, a hint of triumph in her eyes. People change, darling. It's been 5 years. 5 years. Had it really been that long since he'd seen Cassie walk out of their apartment? Her face set with a determination he'd never been able to shake? 5 years since their last conversation, clinical and detached as they finalized the divorce she had initiated. Maxwell loosened his tie, suddenly feeling constricted. He hadn't expected her to accept the invitation. Part of him had hoped she wouldn't. Seeing her again would dredge up questions he'd spent years burying beneath 16-hour workdays and relentless expansion of his company. His phone buzzed with a text from his best man. Rehearsal dinner in 90. Car waiting downstairs. Maxwell sighed, turning away from the window. Tomorrow he would marry Savannah, the perfect corporate wife, beautiful, socially adept, understanding of his work commitments. The press would cover it extensively. Bennett Technologies stock would likely rise on the perception of stability. His board would be pleased. It was a sound business decision, like most decisions in his life. As his private elevator descended, Maxwell found himself wondering what Cassie looked like now. Had Europe changed her? Was she still pursuing that research she'd chosen over their marriage? Had she found someone else? The thought brought an unexpected tightness to his chest that he quickly dismissed. Tomorrow was about moving forward, not looking back. Cassie was the past. Savannah was the future. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and bright. The sprawling Bennett estate transformed into a showcase of opulence and taste. White orchids adorned every surface. Champagne flowed freely, and a string quartet played softly as guests in designer attire mingled on the manicured lawn. In the east wing, Maxwell adjusted his cufflinks, his groomsmen chatting around him. He felt strangely detached, as though watching himself go through the motions from a distance. "You okay, man?" asked James, his CFO and best man. "You look like you're about to face a hostile takeover rather than marry a gorgeous woman." Maxwell forced a smile. "Just focused. Big day. Biggest merger of your career," joked another groomsman, raising his whiskey glass in a toast. The men laughed, but Maxwell's smile didn't reach his eyes. Was that what this was? A merger? An acquisition? The terminology felt uncomfortably APT. Meanwhile, in the bridal suite, chaos had erupted. Savannah paced the room in her underwear and veil, her wedding gown still hanging untouched. "What do you mean she brought children?" she demanded, her voice rising dangerously. "Whose children?" Her assistant swallowed nervously. "Based on their appearance and age, they appear to be Mr. Bennett's, ma'am." "That's impossible," Savannah hissed. "Maxwell doesn't have children. He would have told me. The press would know. There would be child support, custody arrangements." "Unless he didn't know," her wedding planner, Vivian, said quietly. The room fell silent as the implication sank in. Savannah stopped pacing, her face a mask of shock and fury. "She was pregnant when she left him," she whispered, the pieces falling into place. "She never told him. And now she shows up with his children? On our wedding day. What do you want to do?" Vivian asked, her clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. Savannah's mind raced. This wasn't part of her plan. Cassie was supposed to sit quietly, watching enviously as Savannah claimed the life she had abandoned. She wasn't supposed to arrive with bombshell revelations and children who could threaten everything Savannah had worked for. "Find out where they're seated," she ordered. "Move them to the back. And make sure Maxwell doesn't see them before the ceremony. He needs to focus on me today, not some children he never knew existed." "Ms. Carter," Vivian said hesitantly, "don't you think Mr. Bennett has a right to know?" "Not today," Savannah snapped. "Today is about us, our future, not his past mistakes." As her team scrambled to follow her instructions, Savannah turned to the mirror, forcing herself to breathe deeply. This was still salvageable. The ceremony would proceed as planned. She would become Mrs. Bennett. And afterward, they would deal with whatever complications Cassie had brought with her. Outside in the garden, Cassie sat with Noah and Lily, their small hands clasped in hers. They were dressed in their finest clothes, excited by the festivity around them but sensing their mother's tension. "Remember what we talked about," she said gently. "Today you're going to meet someone very important." "Our daddy," Lily said, her dark eyes, so like Maxwell's, serious beyond her years. "Yes, sweetheart. But he doesn't know about you yet, so he might be very surprised." "Will he be happy?" Noah asked, his little brow furrowed with concern. Cassie hesitated, unwilling to make promises she couldn't keep. "I hope so. But no matter what happens, we have each other, right?" The twins nodded solemnly, and Cassie felt a surge of fierce love for these children who had been her world for the past 4 years. Whatever happened today, whatever Maxwell's reaction, she knew she had made the right decision in coming here. Not for Savannah's satisfaction, not even for Maxwell's knowledge, but for Noah and Lily's future. A wedding coordinator approached, looking flustered. "Dr. Grant? I'm afraid there's been a seating change. If you and your guests could move to the section near the back." Cassie smiled pleasantly, recognizing the hand of the bride in this maneuver. "Actually, we're quite comfortable here, thank you. Mr. Bennett's children should have a clear view of their father's wedding. Don't you think?" The coordinator blanched at the direct acknowledgement of the twins' paternity. I'll have to check with the bride." "You do that," Cassie replied calmly. "And while you're at it, perhaps you could inform Mr. Bennett that I'd like a word with him before the ceremony. It's rather important." As the coordinator hurried away, Cassie took a deep breath. There was no turning back now. Inside the main house, Maxwell was checking his watch when a frantic knock came at the door of the groom's suite. "Mr. Bennett?" The wedding coordinator's voice was strained. "There's a situation that requires your attention." James opened the door, revealing the young woman's distressed face. "What kind of situation?" Maxwell asked, irritation creeping into his voice. The ceremony was scheduled to begin in 30 minutes. It's Dr. Grant, sir, your ex-wife. She's requesting to speak with you before the ceremony." Maxwell stiffened. "Cassie's here already?" "Yes, sir. And she's not alone. She has children with her." "Children?" Maxwell repeated, confused. "Whose children?" The coordinator swallowed hard. She says they're yours, sir. The room fell silent. Maxwell stared at the coordinator, certain he had misheard. That's impossible. They appear to be about 4 years old, sir. Twins. A boy and a girl. 4 years old. Which meant they would have been conceived right before. Maxwell's mind flashed back to their last month together, to Cassie's distraction, her frequent doctor's appointments she'd attributed to stress, her final tearful departure when she'd said, "There are things you don't understand, Max, things I can't explain right now." "Where is she?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "In the garden, sir. 3rd row on the left." Without a word to his groomsmen, Maxwell strode from the room, his heart pounding in his chest. This couldn't be happening. Not today. Not after 5 years of silence. He moved through the house like a man in a trance, barely registering the staff and vendors who scrambled out of his way. When he stepped onto the terrace overlooking the garden, his eyes immediately found her, Cassie, sitting with 2 small children whose profiles, even from this distance, struck him with a jolt of recognition. As though sensing his presence, Cassie looked up. Their eyes met across the distance, and for a moment, everything else faded away. The wedding preparations, the guests, the years of separation. Then the little boy turned, following his mother's gaze, and Maxwell found himself looking into a face that was unmistakably a miniature version of his own. "My God," he whispered, "if you believe that the truth always finds its way to the surface, no matter how deeply it's buried, hit that like button right now. And if you're wondering how Maxwell will react to discovering he has children he never knew about on his wedding day, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison to make sure you don't miss what happens next." Maxwell descended the terrace steps slowly, his eyes never leaving the 3 figures who had just upended his carefully ordered world. Guests turned to stare, whispers following in his wake, but he registered none of it. His focus had narrowed to Cassie and the 2 children beside her. As he approached, Cassie stood, placing a protective hand on each child's shoulder. She looked different than he remembered, more confident, her simple blue dress more elegant than the designer gowns surrounding them. But her eyes were the same, direct and unflinching as they met his. "Hello, Maxwell," she said quietly. He stopped a few feet away, unable to tear his gaze from the children. The boy had his eyes, his jawline. The girl had his dark hair, the same determined set to her small chin. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion he couldn't name. "Are they?" "Yes," Cassie replied simply. "Noah and Lily are your children." "Our children." The twins looked up at him with curious, slightly apprehensive expressions. The boy Noah was the first to speak. "Are you really our daddy?" he asked, his small voice carrying in the sudden hush that had fallen over the nearby guests. Maxwell felt his knees weaken. He crouched down to the children's eye level, his hands trembling slightly. It seems that I am." "Mommy showed us your picture," Lily said, studying him intently. "You look bigger in real life." A laugh escaped him, unexpected and slightly broken. "And you both look exactly like the photos on my desk when I was your age. Why didn't you ever come see us?" Noah asked, the innocent question landing like a physical blow. Maxwell looked up at Cassie, the unspoken question clear in his eyes. "Perhaps we should speak privately," she suggested, glancing meaningfully at the growing audience of fascinated wedding guests. Before Maxwell could respond, a sharp voice cut through the tension. "What is going on here?" Savannah stood at the top of the terrace steps, resplendent in her wedding gown, her expression a mixture of fury and disbelief. Behind her, Vivian and several bridesmaids hovered uncertainly. "The ceremony is supposed to start in 20 minutes, Savannah continued, descending the steps with measured control. "Why are you out here talking to them?" Her gaze swept dismissively over Cassie before landing on the twins with barely concealed hostility. Maxwell rose slowly to his feet, feeling as though he were moving through water. "Savannah, I need some time. Something unexpected has come up." "Unexpected?" Savannah's laugh was brittle. That's one way to describe your ex-wife showing up with secret children on our wedding day. She turned to Cassie, her smile sharp as a blade. Quite the dramatic entrance, Dr. Grant. The Bugatti was an especially nice touch. I didn't come for drama, Cassie replied evenly. I came because it was time for Maxwell to know his children. The timing was your choice, not mine. My choice. Savannah's composure slipped momentarily. I invited you, not them. They're 4 years old, Savannah. I wasn't going to leave them in another country while I attended my ex-husband's wedding. Maxwell looked between the two women, realization dawning. You invited her? Personally. Savannah's expression faltered. I sent the invitation, yes. It was a courtesy. She did more than that, Cassie interjected quietly. She contacted my assistant directly, suggesting how important it was to you that I attend. How much you needed my blessing. Maxwell turned to Savannah, his expression hardening. Is that true? I might have reached out, Savannah admitted, her tone defensive. I thought it would be good closure for everyone. Closure, Maxwell repeated, the word hollow. Or was it about parading your victory? Savannah's eyes widened at his perception. Before she could respond, Lily tugged at Cassie's dress. Mommy, is the pretty lady mad at us? She asked in a stage whisper that carried clearly. Cassie knelt beside her daughter. No, sweetheart. She's just surprised. Like your daddy is. I'm not mad at you, Maxwell said quickly, crouching again to address the twins. I wish I had known about you sooner. Why didn't you tell him, Mommy? Noah asked, his innocent question hanging in the air. The gathered guests seemed to collectively hold their breath, waiting for Cassie's answer. Even Savannah fell silent, her anger momentarily eclipsed by curiosity. Cassie took a deep breath, looking directly at Maxwell. Because when I found out I was pregnant, your father had just threatened to disinherit you if you stayed married to that researcher who's holding back your potential. Maxwell flinched as though she'd struck him. What are you talking about? The night before I left, I overheard your conversation with him. He said Bennett Technologies needed a CEO focused solely on growth, not distracted by a wife with her own career ambitions. He said he'd transfer controlling interest to your cousin if you didn't get your priorities straight. That's why you left? Maxwell's voice was barely audible. Because of my father? I left because you agreed with him, Max. Cassie's voice finally betrayed emotion, a hint of old pain breaking through her composure. You said he was right, that something had to change, that our marriage was affecting your ability to lead the company. I didn't mean. You didn't have to spell it out. The choice was clear, your company or our marriage. You chose the company. She straightened her shoulders. 2 weeks later, I discovered I was pregnant. By then, the divorce was already in process, and you were being hailed as the focused, driven CEO your father always wanted. So you kept my children from me for 5 years because of one conversation? Anger began to replace Maxwell's shock. I kept them from the impossible choice you would have faced, Cassie corrected. Your father's approval and your company or your family. I didn't want them growing up feeling like they were the reason you lost everything you'd worked for. That wasn't your decision to make, Maxwell said, his voice rising. Perhaps not, Cassie acknowledged. But I made it with their best interests at heart. And look at what you've accomplished without us, Maxwell. Bennett Technologies spans 3 continents. You're the visionary CEO your father always wanted you to be. At what cost? The words escaped him before he could stop them. Savannah stepped forward, inserting herself between Maxwell and his newly discovered family. This is all very touching, but we have 300 guests waiting and a ceremony scheduled to begin in 15 minutes. She placed a manicured hand on Maxwell's arm. We can deal with this after the wedding. Maxwell looked at her as though seeing her for the first time. You want to proceed? After this? Of course, Savannah said, her smile not reaching her eyes. These complications don't change our plans. We'll work out visitation rights, support payments, whatever's necessary. But today is about us, our future. Our future, Maxwell repeated slowly. He looked back at the twins, who were watching the adults with wide, confused eyes. Then at Cassie, who stood tall and dignified, asking nothing of him despite the bombshell she had delivered. And finally at Savannah, beautiful and poised in her wedding gown, already calculating how to incorporate his newly discovered children into their carefully curated life without disrupting her plans. In that moment, with perfect clarity, Maxwell saw the truth that had been hiding beneath his drive for success, his endless workdays, his emotional detachment. He had spent 5 years building an empire to please his father, preparing to marry a woman who saw him as a prize to be won, all while missing the family he never knew he had. "There isn't going to be a wedding today," he said quietly. Savannah's smile froze. "What did you say?" "I said, there isn't going to be a wedding." Maxwell's voice grew stronger. "Not today. Maybe not ever." Gasps rippled through the watching guests. Savannah's face contorted with disbelief. "You can't be serious," she hissed. "You're calling off our wedding because your ex-wife showed up with some children she claims are yours? They could be anyone's. This could all be an elaborate lie." "They're mine," Maxwell said with absolute certainty. "One look is all it takes to know that." "So what? You're just gonna throw away everything we've built together? For what? Some ready-made family you didn't even know existed an hour ago." Maxwell looked at her sadly. "What have we built together, Savannah? Really? A partnership where you manage my social calendar and I provide the lifestyle you want? Is that what marriage is supposed to be?" "Don't you dare!" Savannah's voice shook with fury. "Don't you dare pretend this is about some philosophical view of marriage. This is about her." She pointed accusingly at Cassie. "It's always been about her, hasn't it? The ex-wife you never got over." "This isn't about Cassie," Maxwell said, though even as the words left his mouth, he wasn't entirely sure they were true. "This is about me finally seeing clearly what I've been doing with my life, the choices I've made, the person I've become." He turned to the assembled guests, who were watching the drama unfold with undisguised fascination. "I apologize to all of you for the inconvenience, but there will be no wedding today. Please enjoy the food and champagne." As murmurs erupted among the guests, Maxwell turned back to Cassie and the twins. "We have a lot to talk about, a lot to figure out." "Yes," Cassie agreed softly. "We do. You'll regret this." Savannah spat, tears of rage glistening in her eyes. "Both of you." She turned and stormed back up the terrace steps, her wedding gown trailing behind her like a defeated flag. In the silence that followed her departure, Lily looked up at Maxwell with solemn eyes. "Are you sad about the pretty lady?" Maxwell knelt down, meeting his daughter's gaze. "No, sweetheart. I'm sad about many things, but not that." "Are you sad you didn't know about us?" Noah asked, his small face serious. "Very sad," Maxwell admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "I've missed so much." "But you know us now," Lily pointed out with a child's simple logic. "So you don't have to be sad anymore." Maxwell felt something break open inside him, a wall he hadn't even realized he'd built. He looked up at Cassie, who was watching them with tears in her eyes. "No," he agreed softly. "I don't have to be sad anymore. If you believe that sometimes what looks like the worst moment of your life can actually be the beginning of something beautiful, hit that like button. And if you're wondering what happens next for Maxwell, Cassie, and their children, comment below with what you think they should do now." As the guests dispersed, some leaving in confusion, others lingering to gossip over champagne, Maxwell led Cassie and the twins to a secluded garden pavilion away from prying eyes. The children, sensing the importance of the moment, played quietly with the tablet Cassie had brought, giving the adults space to talk. "They're beautiful," Maxwell said, watching Noah and Lily with wonder. "Perfect." "They are," Cassie agreed. "Smart too. Noah's already reading at a second-grade level, and Lily can solve puzzles meant for children twice her age." "Like their mother," Maxwell said softly. Cassie met his gaze. "And their father. They have your determination, your focus when something interests them." A heavy silence fell between them, 5 years of unspoken words and missed moments hanging in the air. "Why now?" Maxwell finally asked. After all this time, why bring them here today? Cassie sighed, choosing her words carefully. When I received that invitation, my first instinct was to ignore it. But then I thought about the twins, about the questions they've started asking about their father, about the right they have to know you regardless of our past. And the Bugatti? Maxwell asked, a hint of his old humor surfacing. Was that necessary? A small smile touched Cassie's lips. The car was, perhaps a bit theatrical. But after your fiancé's manipulative invitation, I thought a statement entrance was warranted. How did you afford it? The question escaped before he could stop it. The quantum encryption algorithm I was working on when we were married? The one you thought was taking too much of my time. Cassie's eyes held a quiet triumph. It revolutionized secure communications. The patent sold for, well, enough to buy a nice car and set up trust funds for the children. Maxwell shook his head, a mixture of admiration and regret washing over him. I was a fool. We both made choices, Cassie said gently. I could have told you about the pregnancy. Should have, probably. But I was hurt and angry, and then afraid of disrupting the life you were building. The life I was building, Maxwell repeated hollowly. A company that consumes every waking hour. A relationship based on convenience and appearances. A father who still manages to control my decisions from the grave. He ran a hand through his hair. What kind of life is that? A successful one by most standards. Not by the ones that matter. Maxwell looked over at the twins again. I've missed 4 years of their lives. First steps, first words, first everything. You don't have to miss anything else, Cassie said quietly. Their eyes met, the implication of her words hanging between them. Not a promise, not yet, but a possibility neither had considered until this moment. What happens now? Maxwell asked. That depends on what you want, Max. Before he could answer, Noah approached, his small face serious. Mommy, Lily's hungry. Is there food at this party? Maxwell smiled, crouching down to his son's level. There's a whole feast prepared. Would you and your sister like to try some cake? Noah's eyes widened. Before dinner? Really? Special circumstances call for special rules, Maxwell said, glancing up at Cassie for approval. She nodded, a soft smile playing at her lips. Just this once. As they walked toward the reception tent, Lily slipped her small hand into Maxwell's, the gesture so natural it took his breath away. Are you coming home with us? She asked. Maxwell looked to Cassie, uncertain how to answer. Not today, sweetheart, Cassie replied gently. But your daddy will visit us very soon, and maybe we'll stay in New York a little longer than we planned. How long are you here for? Maxwell asked, hope rising in his chest. Our return tickets are for next week, but they're changeable. Cassie met his gaze steadily. We have time to figure things out, if that's what you want. It is, Maxwell said without hesitation. More than anything. 1 year later, the Bennett estate garden was transformed once again. Not for a wedding this time, but for a 4th birthday celebration. Colorful balloons and streamers replaced the formal floral arrangements, and children's laughter echoed where string quartets had once played. Maxwell moved through the crowd of parents and children, carrying a tray of juice boxes, looking more relaxed than anyone who knew him from the business world would have believed possible. He wore jeans and a casual button-down, his once perpetual tie nowhere to be seen. Daddy, hurry up with the juice, Lily called from the center of a circle of children. We're dying of thirst over here. Dramatic as always, Maxwell laughed, distributing the drinks. Just like your mother. I heard that, Cassie said, appearing at his side with a plate of cupcakes. Her hair was longer now, her smile easier. The year had changed them both. Only stating facts, Maxwell replied, stealing a quick kiss that made the watching children giggle and groan. They moved together through the party, a team in this as they had become in so many things over the past year. It hadn't been easy. There had been difficult conversations, adjustments, compromises on all sides. Maxwell had stepped back from the day-to-day operations of Bennett Technologies, appointing a CEO while remaining as chairman. Cassie had accepted a research position at Columbia, bringing her groundbreaking work back to the States. The twins had thrived with both parents in their lives, their initial wariness of this new father giving way to a deep bond that sometimes left Maxwell overwhelmed with gratitude for the second chance he'd never expected. "Have you seen the latest?" Cassie asked quietly, nodding toward her phone on a nearby table. Maxwell glanced at the business news headline, "Savannah Carter named CEO of rival tech firm, vows to redefine industry standards." "Good for her," he said sincerely. "She's brilliant at what she does." "No regrets?" Cassie asked, studying his face. Maxwell looked around at the birthday party, at Noah showing his friends how the robot they'd built together worked, at Lily directing her assistant, a patient grandfather from next door, on proper cupcake distribution, at the home they were creating together. "Not a single one," he replied, his arm slipping around Cassie's waist. "Though I do wonder sometimes." "What? If I should thank her," Maxwell admitted. "If she hadn't invited you to the wedding, hadn't been so determined to showcase her victory, we might have gone on as we were," Cassie finished for him. "You building your empire, me raising our children an ocean away, all of us missing what could have been. Fate has a strange way of correcting our mistakes," Maxwell mused. "Or giving us the chance to correct them ourselves," Cassie countered, always the pragmatist. Their conversation was interrupted by Noah running up, excitement written across his face. "Dad, Mom, can we open presents now? Please. What do you think?" Maxwell asked Cassie, his eyes crinkling with happiness that still sometimes caught him by surprise. "I think," she said, taking his hand, "that we've kept them waiting long enough." As they joined the circle of children gathering around the present table, Maxwell reflected on the journey of the past year. He had lost a wedding but gained a family, lost the approval of a father who had never truly seen him, but gained the adoration of a son and daughter who saw him exactly as he was, lost a life built on appearances and expectations, but gained one built on love and second chances. Sometimes, he realized, the most precious gifts arrive in the most unexpected packages. And sometimes, the path to true happiness begins with the courage to change direction, even when the whole world is watching. If the story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had a moment that completely changed the direction of your life? A time when what seemed like a disaster turned out to be a blessing in disguise? Remember, my beautiful sisters and brothers, that sometimes the most painful interruptions to our carefully laid plans are actually divine interventions, redirecting us toward the life we were truly meant to live. The courage to embrace unexpected change might just lead to the happiness you never knew you were missing. Until next time, this is Mr. Harrison, reminding you that true love isn't about perfect timing or perfect people. It's about perfect recognition of what truly matters when it matters most.